global stability and preparing the world for a post-corona phase, the Arab Gulf states have been activating their diplomacy toward the People's Republic of China. This was manifested by the visit by the leader of the United Arab Emirates to Peking. Abu Dhabi Crown Prince Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan held a meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. The previous day, he attended the opening exercises of the Winter Olympics.
Well, one of the things that we've seen in the last year during the Biden administration is a tilt out of the Middle East by the U.S. The U.S. is repositioning forces, it's leaving the area. And when we tilt out, we see Russia and China tilt in. So this is another example of China filling the vacuum of a U.S. Presence, a U.S. focus on the Middle East. And our allies are hedging their bets. They're talking to China, they're talking to Russia, because the United States isn't as reliable or influential as it could be and it should be. Well, the interesting thing is the other economies outside of Iran in the Middle East have a lot to offer China and Russian investment. And so this would make sense. If you're worried about Iran, and if you see China align with Iran and Russia align with Iran militarily, it makes sense to engage China, to engage Russia. And the Emirates are very concerned about Iranian activity. And I'm sure they're expressing those concerns to China. And again, China's very pragmatic. It is not going to pick Iran over the Gulf countries. It will pick them both. And because of that, it actually gives, U.S. allies a greater comfort knowing that they are engaging with China, because China has a lot to lose if they alienate the Gulf states, and more to lose if they simply go with Iran.
The Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman had also important talks with the Chinese leadership. Due to conflicts of schedule, he could not be present at the opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics. Last month, the Saudi Foreign Minister Faisal bin Farhan met with his Chinese counterpart, and they had important talks on Iran, Afghanistan, and other topics. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates are the two most influential economic powers in the Middle East and North Africa. Saudi goods accounted for 17% of Chinese imports in 2021.
Well, I think that the relationship between China and Saudi Arabia is multifaceted across many different domains. At this point, the relationship has deepened significantly, especially over the last few years. So, in 2021, Saudi goods accounted for about 17% of Chinese imports. And now we're learning that the Saudi oil company Aramco has revived its previous talks with Norinco to potentially set up a $10 billion oil refinery in China, which obviously would be a significant investment. China's also been investing in critical infrastructure in the region, and it's been making different deals to supply countries there with telecommunications, as well as military technology, and that includes Saudi Arabia, but is not only specific to Saudi Arabia. The other point is, recently there was this meeting between the leaders of Saudi Arabia and China, and in China's official summary of the meeting, obviously it's a lot of propaganda. They had very warm praise for Saudi Arabia, which they called a good friend, a good partner, a good brother. But we also learned that top defense officials, even more recently from the two countries, have held a virtual meeting to discuss ways to deepen the military ties between the two countries.
On the other hand, China desires a reduction of the influence of America in the Gulf region. Yet, both Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates do not want to cut their ties with America. They maintain a logical, coherent, and balanced foreign policy. Each country has a sovereign right to initiate decisions while assessing its own interests. The United States still remain committed to the Gulf, and it will never withdraw completely from the area.
Well, see, we saw this during the Obama administration. Obama tried to balance the Middle East by giving Iran more influence. And all that did was bring the United States back in to deal with ISIS, to deal with Syria, to deal with Iran's fracturing of Yemen. And so the United States cannot leave the Middle East. It can say so in rhetoric, but it won't leave. And the future administration is going to re-engage because it has to. We need to shore up our allies, Israel, the Sunni Gulf states, and our regional allies that are very concerned about Iran's activities, very concerned about a reemergence of ISIS. So the United States has to stay involved, whether the Biden administration wants to or not. We have to remember, Obama had to go back into Iraq, had to go into Syria, because he tried to get out of the Middle East and give more power to Iran.
It is also important that China has to declare whether its interests with the Gulf states are more political than economic, or the opposite is true. China has also to use its close relations with Iran to stop Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. China has to press Taliban in Afghanistan not to renew the civil war and quit extremism.
I think China has shown that it takes a very strong view of extremism in its own country, and some would say, I mean, I think we all know the Uyghur genocide that's been taking place in China now for quite a while. So I'm sure that they would be a proponent of this type of activity, but Iran has become heavily reliant on China since the U.S. withdrew from the JCPOA in order to restrict Iran's nuclear program. And when we reimposed sanctions as well that crippled Iran's economy, they turned to China as the main sort of purchaser of Iranian energy products. And that remains the case today. That economic relationship is so important for both countries that these political, what they consider to be political issues, really don't bear, they're not prioritized very highly. I think they're going to continue to be a long-term buyer of oil and gas and a potential source of investment, which is certainly what the Taliban are interested in. And they're interested in billions and billions in investment without all of the hooks and the political price that any deals with the U.S. or Europe would bring them. So I think right now, with respect to Afghanistan and the Taliban, they're challenged by ISIS-K, who has come out strongly against the Chinese actions against the Uyghurs, which is unique because the Taliban obviously have said nothing. And in general, the diplomatic efforts to get the Taliban government formally recognized in the international arena have not gone well. So we'll see what happens there. The Chinese have promised billions of dollars in investment in Afghanistan, and so far those have not materialized. Well, I think that the Biden administration, in many regards, is missing in action. I think the increase and expansion of Chinese influence in the Middle East, and particularly the Gulf, should be of top concern to them. But I haven't seen the necessary actions taken that I would have expected, and that's very disappointing to see. I think there's, from the Biden administration perspective, when they say the number one security concern is China and that's how it's prioritized, why aren't they paying more attention to what China is doing in the Middle East? It's very concerning for a lot of us watching this right now.
However, the biggest challenge is what kind of relationship China will have with the Arab Gulf states if the Biden administration signs a nuclear deal with Iran. And even less predictable is how China's interest in the Gulf will be pursued if Europe is in big trouble if Russia takes a military action against Ukraine.
Well, I think China is hoping and messaging that this will not happen. China has relations with both Russia and Ukraine. And I think that they don't want to have to take sides in this. I think ultimately, in the event that Russia does invade Ukraine, then they may be forced to take a side, and that will be complicated for China. Although at the end of the day, I think they will have to partner with Russia. I think fundamentally, because, and just to be clear, there may be, the Biden administration has threatened sanctions against Russia if they move forward with this action. And I think we can anticipate China backing Russia in the United Nations if that comes to fruition. I think when we're talking about how would that affect what each country is doing in the Middle East, I don't see a big change, at least in the short term. I think if the conflict expands beyond Ukraine and into NATO countries like Poland and other NATO partners, I think that will be a much more severe response will be required. And I think that there will be second and third order effects that right now at this point are very hard to determine. It's a very crucial time right now. And I know a lot of us did not anticipate any sort of potential for kinetic activity in Europe, but unfortunately, here we are.
The biggest advantages for closer relationships invincible China and the Gulf states are the fact that all are working hard to keep the whole Middle East stable. Gradually, the three countries will develop a strategy to stop any country like Iran from destabilizing the Gulf. Hopefully, this will be achieved soon. China could decide that its relationship with the Arab Gulf states is more important than its relationship with Iran.
Iran is easy for China. It's not more important, it's easy. It's desperate. It needs friends. It has Russia and China, basically. And so China is a predatory lender. This $450 or $450 billion loan to Iran is for China's benefit. It will build infrastructure. It will build up Iran's 5G network, Iran's infrastructure for Chinese use. And even hardliners in Iran are saying that this is bad practice. We saw the Iranians give up water rights to Russia in exchange for funds, in exchange for military equipment. And now we're seeing the regime do the same thing with China. Iran is easy pickings for China. The Gulf is not. The Gulf is hedging its bets. The Gulf produces oil. The Gulf has more money than Iran has. The Gulf is not being sanctioned by the West. Iran is. And Iran's activities will continue to make it a pariah state when it comes to business investment. And China and Russia are very pragmatic when it comes to this. They will use Iran for its resources. They will take advantage of Iran. And then they will try to do the same with Western countries, but they will be smarter than Iran is because they're not desperate.
The conclusion is that China will increase its influence in the Gulf parallel to a general perception of the United States retreating from this critical part of the world. China also will witness a growing Russian involvement in the Gulf. France, as well, is putting more emphasis on its strong ties with the Arab Gulf states. China could face strong competition from Russia and France.
Well, see, France is key here. I mean, France has been the strongest Western ally pushing back against Iran. Talking about strengthening up the Iran deal. China is very pragmatic. China doesn't put its military at risk. China doesn't put its people at risk. It basically buys influence. Through bakshish, through other influences. Russia doesn't have the money China has. Russia will sell military equipment to the region, but 2 out of 3 pieces will break. Won't work. It'll be cheaper than American equipment, but it's not reliable. So China really doesn't have a lot of competition when it comes to Russia. It has more when it comes to France's influence, but not France's ability to inject economic stimulus. The United States here is a key missing component. The United States has the economy, has the offensive military capabilities that the Biden administration does not want to give our allies as part of another concession to Iran in the Vienna talks. And, China's just simply filling the gap. It's an easy thing for them to do. They can sell equipment to our allies. They can tell our allies that we won't make you change before we sell you something like the United States will ask. And it's just an easy thing for China to do. The problem is China has designs. China wants more influence. China's a predatory lender. Anything China builds, it's for China. And our allies should know that. And they should simply wait out the Biden administration. Don't make any deals now. Wait out because the new administration's coming in. whether it be a strengthened Congress, a strengthened Senate, or a new president in 2024. The embarrassment in Afghanistan, in the Ukraine, in Vienna, are giving all of our adversaries a confidence to exploit U.S. weakness. Our allies should be strategic, be patient, and wait for a change in the administration.
The United States cannot stop China from developing its ties with the Gulf. So far, the United States has not issued any statement criticizing China's growing influence in the Gulf. The question remains how the Biden administration is going to counter China's strong relationship, especially with America's historical allies like Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. Hey, Maria Malouf here. Please click to like and subscribe to Maria Malouf TV YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.